good morning. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I'm Heather Cagle, Managing Editor of Punchbowl News. Thank you all for being here in person and for those watching on the live stream. We have a very exciting conversation today with Congressman John Joyce. He's a 3-term member from Pennsylvania. We'll talk a little news of the day. I know there's no shortage there. And then we'll dive into 5G and American competitiveness. I'd like to thank CTIA for making this conversation possible. After my interview with Congressman Joyce, I will be joined on stage by Meredith Atwell-Baker. She's president and CEO of CTIA for a fireside chat. As always, please share about these conversations on social media. You can find us on all platforms at Punchbowl News. And with that, I'd like to welcome Congressman Joyce. That plant is a little tricky right there, huh, to navigate. Oh, Congressman Joyce, so last year we were here together. We were talking about healthcare. This year is 5G, lots of exciting stuff to get into. On that, first though, we always start with news of the day. It's been a real doozy of a week, as you know, up there. And it's probably going to go into the weekend. I want to start with foreign aid. It looks like you guys will be here for a rare weekend session, Saturday vote, possibly on sending aid to Ukraine, Israel, the Indo-Pacific. Last time there was a Ukraine vote in the House, I think you voted against the funding, is that correct? So where are you now? Do you think that you could support this package? What are you thinking heading into this weekend?
I think that this is an important weekend because we're going to address 5 different bills. And I think that's important, the way that this is being presented. With the opportunity, and Speaker Mike Johnson has given the opportunity for many amendments to be put forward. I look forward to seeing how each and these packages are put together at the end. And I'm positive about this experience. I think that this allows the true process to evolve and to be fine-tuned so that we can make those necessary decisions and support our allies and our friends.
Yeah, as you note, I mean, it's very rare to have an open amendment process in the House.
And it is. And to Speaker Johnson's credit, he is allowing that to occur.
Do you think, I know that, part of the issue here is there's a growing group of Ukraine skeptics in your conference that is getting larger. But Speaker Johnson has come out this week and he said, this is about history. I want to make the right choice. I don't want to be selfish here. This is very important that we do this. Do you think he's making the case for Ukraine aid?
I think he's making the case that we have the opportunity to have the experience right now live, to have the opportunity to make the necessary changes and to move forward in a positive direction.
Okay. Another part of all of this has been the threat from some of your colleagues, notably 2, about a motion to vacate Speaker Johnson. You guys went through a lot with former Speaker McCarthy last fall when this happened. What do you think about the timing of this motion to vacate? Do you support that idea? Do you think it's short-sighted? Where are you on this?
I feel that Speaker Johnson has stepped into a difficult situation and done an incredibly successful job. These are challenging times, and to have the ability to have a motion to vacate, which is 1 individual stepping forward to it and now 2, I think those are challenges. Having said that, I think that Speaker Johnson will be successful and will continue to lead this Congress.
I want to get to Spectrum 5G, the topic of the day, but one more question on that. We reported this morning at the top of Punchbowl News that some members are pushing Speaker Johnson to raise the threshold for the motion to vacate, and they would put that in the rule this week is kind of what they're talking about. So it couldn't just be 1 member triggering this all the time. Is that something that you would support? I
would support that. I think having that challenge, that threat always hanging over you makes it difficult to lead. I think that increasing that threshold would be something I could clearly get behind.
Yeah. Thank you. Making a little news here, you guys. All right, let's turn to the topic today. We're really going to dig in on 5G and American competitiveness, but first, I want to localize it a little bit for you. Tell us about your district, the makeup of it. It's just outside of Pittsburgh. I know we were talking about this in the green room. And, how this issue, how the spectrum discussion impacts your district specifically.
My district is south central and southwestern Pennsylvania. So it starts in Gettysburg in the east and goes out to Somerset County in the west. It is counties right on the Mason-Dixon line and just north of that, a total of 12 counties, mostly rural counties. But as I said, small, great communities like Gettysburg, Chambersburg, Altoona, Johnstown. These are communities of 20 to 40,000, not large communities. But in between, there are huge gaps in broadband service. Recently, we had the opportunity to bring FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, to the district. And he had an opportunity to sit down and talk, not just to healthcare providers, but to people in industry, to educators, and most important, to farmers as well. All of those have access and needs in the information highway. If there's one thing about 5G that I have learned in Congress, is that is the access to connection that Americans want and Americans deserve. So the district has areas, has nooks and crannies that don't have that connection. And we look forward with the expansion of broadband to connect all of Pennsylvania's 13th congressional district, to connect all of Pennsylvania, and to connect all of America worldwide. I think that's why it's so important, Heather, that we have this conversation about broadband and how we need to be able to expand spectrum and what those steps need to be.
What's an issue? I want to dig in on that just a little bit more, but like when you're talking about healthcare in a rural district like yours, are farmers, like what are the type of issues that come up with this lack of connectivity?
As a physician, let's talk healthcare first. During COVID, we saw that telemedicine, if there's any silver lining to COVID, telemedicine is one that individuals were able to log on and not have to leave their homes and have the capabilities of connecting with their physician, who might be very close, but because of COVID, the lockdown prohibited that. Moving out of COVID, we're seeing that individuals have that expectation. Again, South Central Pennsylvania, we've got great healthcare facilities in Philadelphia and in Pittsburgh, specialists there, but that telemedicine connection allows those individuals who might right now, today, be seeing a cardiac specialist in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh from their home, as long as they have that connection. As far as agriculture goes, the precision agriculture, which utilizes equipment that connects through broadband to the farmer so he can actually fine-tune the amount of fertilizer that's being put down, protect the environment, save costs. But if he can't connect with a 5G system, he doesn't have the capabilities of using what current farm equipment is being sold with. Industry, it's a big component of it. Industries throughout Pennsylvania, throughout my district, want to have the capabilities of connecting. And so expanding 5G allows them to have that connectivity. One of the great takeaway messages when we had this roundtable discussion with Brendan Carr was one of the teachers said that they could identify which of the children don't have broadband access.
Really?
So during COVID, we had a year and a half of shutdown.
Right.
We all recognized that math and reading scores fell dramatically. But now that the students are back in the classroom, if a teacher can say, I know which kid doesn't have access because when they come in the morning, they don't have their assignments prepared or done. It's different. When my kids were young, they would come home from school, you'd rifle through their backpack, you'd see what their assignment was, you'd sit at the kitchen table and do that, and then they could go to practice or go play. It's different now. Parents log on, see what was covered that day, see the progress that their child does, and see the assignment for tomorrow. If a parent doesn't have that capability of having that connection, if they don't know what's going on in the school that day and they don't know what's expected tomorrow, those children continue to fall behind. And so broadband in education, in healthcare, in agriculture, and in business, it's an important avenue that's the expectation of what families, of what industry needs today.
Those are really good examples. I think sometimes in DC, we get so caught up in the policy conversation about any topic that we forget about the real world implications here, you know? I want to get to the federal government's role in all of this, but first, I just want to ask you quickly, the Affordable Connectivity Program, which provides affordable broadband access to many communities, is about to expire. There's been an issue with particularly Republicans in the Senate who don't want to provide more funding for this program. Where are you on this program?
The ACP served a vital role, particularly when people were locked down during COVID. But moving out of that, there are many other opportunities for individuals to maintain connectivity. Representative Bob Latta is currently organizing a workforce to see where the Universal Service Fund is. And I think we can find the right steps forward.
Thank you. Let's talk about the federal government's role. We'll zoom out a little bit. Especially when it comes to spectrum. I think in a lot of other issues, Republicans say the federal government is too involved. But when I've been looking into this the past few weeks to do research for this event, what I hear is the government is not doing enough or not moving fast enough. So what is your take on what role the federal government can play here, and what are they getting right or wrong right now?
I think it's a great way to really delve into the situation right now. Let's set the table. Let's talk about what's important. We need, as government, to be able to enhance the available bands. Mm-hmm. We need to make sure that there's competition. We need to work to reauthorize the spectrum. We need to reauthorize the Spectrum Auction Authority. And the House has a version of that, the Senate has a version of that, and that will all lead to the expansion of the 5G system. We need to be able to work together because it is the access that all of industry needs and all of America needs right now. Last year, at the end of last year, we were able to, legislation that I sponsored on the House side with the 5G Sale Act, allowed the House version to pass, the Senate version to pass, and President Biden signed into law. This was a portion of the spectrum that had been auctioned, successfully paid for 2 years ago, but had not been released because the Spectrum Authority had expired. So with this legislation, something that had stalled for 2 years was rolled out in 2 weeks. So we need to continue to allow the reauthorization of the spectrum auction. We need to make sure that America takes the lead in 5G. We need to make sure that we, as government, allow that innovation to continue to occur right here.
And I want to dig in on the FCC's auction authority, which, as you noted, expired last March. You guys were able to do something temporary, but there's been a debate about reauthorizing this authority for 2 years or 5 years. I know the House and Senate are kind of on different pages here. Do you expect anything to happen this Congress, and what should we all in the audience be watching?
My hope is that by the end of the year, we can have that reauthorization occur. It not only is positive for the individual, for anyone who logs on, it's positive for industry because competition can continue to occur. It's what's needed worldwide so that we can take that dominance in 5G. We had that dominance in 4G, but we're going to lose that to China if we don't have this reauthorization of the spectrum to occur. The auction authority must be extended.
Why do you think we've seen such a standoff here on this issue in Congress?
I think that the perspective from the House and the perspective from the Senate are two different perspectives, but I think that this is an opportunity for a conference to occur and to be able to move forward. I think that both the House and the Senate recognize how important this is, and we have a very short window to the end of the year to get this completed.
Yeah, and there's a lot on your to-do list, too, as you know. Let's talk more about 5G, and we get to break a little news here. I've been told you're planning to introduce a resolution related to this. Can you share that first with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So a resolution that we're going to be releasing very shortly will allow the innovation to continue, the competition to continue. As I mentioned, the United States was the leader in 4G. But right now we're watching China continue to expand. China, which wants to be the leader in 5G, this affirmation of the competitive nature of 5G has to be affirmed from government, and this resolution will indeed do that.
And what's the socialization process been like so far? Are you just at the beginning, or have you found a bipartisan co-sponsor? Have you found someone in the Senate to sponsor it?
We're at the beginning stages, but there is an incredible interest from my colleagues, both on my side of the aisle and on the other side of the aisle, to move forward. All of America wants this. All of government needs to be behind this.
Right. Have you talked to your chairwoman, Kathy McMorris Rogers, on this issue yet?
We have, and she's an innovator, and she wants to see this come to completion.
Right. Let's talk, I want to dig in more on, and you've mentioned this, but competitiveness, global competitiveness. What are your main concerns when it comes to America's 5G capabilities compared to other countries like China, which you just mentioned? What are you most worried about?
Right now, we have an opportunity to expand a certain portion of the spectrum, the lower 3. And this is right now, it's being utilized by the Department of Defense. I think there can be a sharing of this DoD spectrum that we'll see industry and defense be able to work together. Defense doesn't have that great ability to work with industry, but this will open that door to see that sharing. And then the innovation, which always, if not in this specific case, comes from industry, can be shared with defense. We need to be the most secure and the most innovative when it comes to 5G. Industry can achieve that. The Department of Defense can draw on that. And successfully, the expansion of sharing in the lower three will allow 5G to be more successful. This is so important for both sides. It's important to have additional access for industry in the lower three, and it's important for the Department of Defense to have the innovation that industry brings to the table.
When it comes to your global concern, is it China that we should be focused on? Are there other countries that you're watching that are making advancements? Looking globally, what countries are you most worried about?
China.
Yeah.
I had a great honor of serving on the China task force, and I went in there knowing that China wants to eat your lunch. But they want your dinner and they want your milk money too. and we're seeing that. We have to be very cognizant that as China wants to expand 5G throughout Asia and throughout Europe, and only utilizing Chinese chips to take that dominance away. We have the dominance in 4G. We did this successfully. But we need to continue that innovation. We need to continue that competition, which allows for innovation. We've seen that with the recent expansion of 5G. 100 times more pieces of personal equipment are being able to be utilized at 100 times the speed. We want to be able to be the world leader. And then we have that dominance, which is completely juxtaposed to the dominance by the Chinese Communist Party. We have innovation, they have control. Those are two different models to be ruling with. Innovation allows further development, further expansion, further access, whereas control is the MO of which the Chinese Communist Party runs. We will have our information, our technology being stifled by the Chinese Communist Party. Innovation versus control, I'm always with innovation.
Yeah. The interesting thing about not just this, but China in particular and our posture towards it, we've seen a lot of bipartisan cooperation on that. You mentioned the China Select Committee, but this is one of the bright spots in a Congress that has had a lot of chaos and partisanship. Members have come together when it comes to China and have tried to draft things to deal with that country and its competitiveness towards us.
I think this is going to be an ongoing issue. I think America, particularly the House of Representatives, recognizes the challenge of what the Chinese Communist Party and how they are stifling our ability to have that connectivity.
Yeah. I want to ask you, I know we're running out of time and got a few more minutes left. The White House put out a national spectrum policy. What is the role of the White House here? There's several, obviously, government agencies involved, but does the White House have a big role to play here? Are you trying to work with them at all? Have you heard from them? What do you think the White House's position is?
I think we all have a role. I think effective leadership can come from all three sides. I think it can come from the House, the Senate, and the White House. I think the collaboration is of most importance. I think the legislative part and reauthorizing the spectrum auction has to come from the legislative body, and I think that's where our role is the strongest right now.
And let's get back to that. I know we were talking about it earlier, but before we sign off in a couple minutes, do you see that happening in the lame duck? I mean, what is the timeline for you?
Look, 5 years ago, I was a happy country doctor. I'm an optimist. I am encouraged that we can be here and be able to achieve this by the end of this Congress. I think it's an important piece of legislation. I think that there are many pieces of important legislation, but I would put this in the top.
Are you surprised that it's been lapsed this long?
I am.
Yeah.
And I think that we have to be able to put our shoulders to the wheel and get this finished by the end of the year.
Yeah. Okay, I just got a couple more questions before I let you go. I got to ask you about Pennsylvania in the election year. President Biden was up there 3 times, including today, this week. Former President Trump was there last weekend. it kind of seems like it's the center of the political universe. Would you agree with that?
Totally agree with that. I think that Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, will be an important state in the upcoming elections. I think that that's why you see the presence of President Trump there and President Biden 3 times this week. Yeah. I think that we'll see that in the upcoming Senate race with Dave McCormick challenging Senator Bob Casey. Pennsylvania's in play. This is an important time. All eyes are on us. Truly
they are. Speaking of McCormick, my last question, he still hasn't taken off in the polling yet. He's behind Casey 5 to 6 points or so. There's been some carpetbagging allegations, which I know you're familiar with. What do you think he can do to break through and get to Pennsylvanians?
I think recent polls have shown that Dave McCormick has actually come within a point or two.
He's closer.
Than were just a month ago. I think that, and I've worked shoulder to shoulder with him. I've campaigned with Dave McCormick. I think his affability, his presence. Look, this is a former West Point grad who was the captain of the wrestling team. When I take him to central Pennsylvania, where, just as an FYI, Penn State once again won the NCAA wrestling championship, people pay attention to Dave McCormick. And as a Penn Stater, I pay attention to wrestling. So we're able to make that connection. And he does connect incredibly well with the citizens of Pennsylvania.
I like the wrestling mention you worked in there. Before I let you go, what is the thing you want to leave us with when it comes to 5G, Congress? You are an optimist. Maybe you can take us out on a hopeful note here.
I am an optimist. I think that the 5G and the expansion of the spectrum allows America to once again be the leader in telecommunications. I think that allowing the reauthorization of the auction of the spectrum is an important piece of legislation. If not achieved by the end of the year, has to be a top priority moving forward. I think that America is now dependent on the ingenuity that has occurred. America wants to see that continue.
Thank you, Congressman Joyce.
Thank you.
What a great conversation.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome Meredith Atwell-Baker to the stage, President and CEO of CTIA. Hey, Meredith, thank you. We've got a lot to dig in here. He left.
Heather.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
So we heard a lot from Congressman Joyce about reauthorizing the FCC's Spectrum Auction Authority. As I said earlier, though, Congress has been at a standstill when it comes to this. Are you hopeful something gets done this year? What are you thinking?
I, too, am an optimist. In fact, voted most optimistic in my high school class. Have really loved seeing the forward movement that we've seen, particularly with the Cruz-Thune-Blackburn bill. So I think people are really realizing that this is not only important for our economic security, but it's critical for our national security. And I think, well, I mean, let's take a step back. If you look right now about what I'm most excited about, it's what 5G is actually doing out there. I mean, if you look at the Cleveland Clinic, they're building from the ground up a smart hospital that's 5G for assisted surgeries, for better, patient care. But if you look up the street, I know you're a football fan, we're going to skip over the Alabama versus Texas thing. But if you go right up to Gallaudet University, they've been working with one of our member companies on football helmets. And so, like, the coach has an iPad on the side of the field, and he's calling the plays to his quarterback's helmet, which is saying, what was one? Bone or puck or whatever, or even just an exclamation point like, look at me. Because now this is enabling all these, a real hard of hearing segment, which actually they invented the huddle, by the way, but they're allowed to play football. But if you actually turn on your television, you see all these ads for 5G home broadband, which, as it turns out, is the first killer app of 5G. And it's because it's bringing real competition to cable. And 98% of new broadband customers are wireless. 5G home broadband is fast, it's cheaper, and it's so exciting that 1 in 5 new customers are new broadband subscribers. So it's closing the digital divide.
Yeah.
So I'm optimistic about auction authority as long as it's tied to specific bands. I think it's really important. I think people are seeing 5G is out there, it's working, and we need more of it. I think, so I guess last year, all of this stuff, from the hospitals to the football helmets to home broadband, mobile broadband use increased 40%.
Wow.
Year over year, 40%. Like Texas is increasing hugely, 40% over the last 20 years. So that's a lot. 40% year over year is a lot of growth. We don't have any new spectrum. We don't have any new spectrum on the way. So this year, our carriers can handle that much data, but that's really unsustainable. We've got to get more spectrum. I think we're estimating right now, just at the bare minimum, 400 megahertz by the year 2027.
Wow.
We got to get this moving.
That was you. It's like she hasn't seen my script, but my next question was, as part of that, we've heard conversations about including a pipeline of new spectrum. Why is that important?
Well, okay, so, I mean, Congress operates on deadlines, right? I don't think yes, we have this fantastic new spectrum strategy that has agreed to study the lower 3 gigahertz and the 7 and 8 gigahertz band. That's great progress, especially because they said they're going to look at all options, which means relocation. Because frankly, dynamic spectrum sharing is great. It's a moonshot. It's going to take a while. It took 10 years for us to get to the moon when President Kennedy announced the moonshot.
Right.
We need to actually look at relocation, and we need to look at specific bands. So to say that all of a sudden someone's going to wake up and say, I think I'm going to turn in my spectrum today, it really doesn't happen. We need Congress, and we need deadlines.
And I asked Congressman Joyce this, but are you surprised that this standstill has gone on this long, or maybe not?
So, I mean, the United States invented the spectrum auctions, and the rest of the world copied it. I mean, Nobel Prize winners have gotten, prizes because of spectrum here in the United States. So, yes, I'm surprised. It's the first time it's lapsed. It's so important to our economy. It's so important to our national security. And as Representative Joyce said, we're getting lapped by China. They have 4 times more spectrum than we do. It's really hard to win a race when you've got, both arms tied behind your back.
You mentioned the Gallaudet football helmets. I saw that there was a commercial running about that a lot during football season in particular. And at first I was like, is this real? This is so cool.
It's really cool. And the kids they're so excited. And if you think what the ramifications of that can be, it's just a real world example right up the street of what people are doing with 5G. And there are entrepreneurs out there all over the country that are using innovative things for automated. If you go to Yellowstone, they have automated buses for the traffic now. So you jump on your automated bus and you get a ride. So
I probably need that. I heard it's busy there.
Yeah, so it's helping with traffic. It's helping with environment, obviously healthcare. The implications are great, and we're just at the beginning of really seeing that. But we're going to need more spectrum because we're using a lot more data.
Right. And you touched on this a minute ago, but the White House's national spectrum policy, they released it last year. They released a formal implementation plan a few weeks ago. Do you think they're moving in the right direction? Do you agree with what they're putting out there? What's your thought on that?
I'm super glad we've got some bands to focus on now. And I'm really glad that we're looking at all options. And we just had the Department of Defense over to CTIA for a big seminar. And I was encouraged to have us all working together. But I've been in this for, 25 years, and we see it time again. It works when you realize it's a win-win situation, that consumers need more data for the next generations of 5G innovations, but DoD needs new equipment. And the nice thing about Spectrum's auctions is they provide the money to provide new equipment. Right. So it really can be a win-win situation, and that's what we've been encouraging is let's all just make sure we're at the table and figuring out how everybody can find their piece of this and move forward.
Right. We heard a lot from Congressman Joyce about the importance of America remaining competitive when it comes to 5G and our global competitors. I know you have touched on that a little bit, but I was hoping you could expand. What's really at stake here? What are we looking at 5 or 10 years down the road if we don't take action?
Well, the United States didn't win in 3G. We were still split on what kind of standards we wanted. We had some carriers doing some standards and some doing others. We got it together. We got the spectrum situation right for 4G and all of the operating systems. Uber, which didn't work that great for me here this morning, but Uber or Airbnb, all of these great innovations that are based on the sharing economy are based here in the United States. And when you look at China, they're building towers everywhere. And I was like, why are they building towers in the middle of nowhere? Well, autonomous trucks, right? Agriculture, precision agriculture. That's not where people live, but those are some of the killer apps that we foresee in 5G. So China's really making this a national policy. And last summer, they snapped their fingers and gave 400 megahertz to 5G. We can't do that. We need to sit down at the table and negotiate and make sure but we do need to get there. We need the 400 megahertz to keep pace, because all of this innovation is going to go to China and all of the countries that they are working with in Africa and South America. When you look at it if you take a stance back and you looked at it globally, it's a real race, and it is, like I said, it's a national security issue.
I mentioned earlier, but a bright spot in this Congress is the bipartisanship effort to address national security concerns when it comes to China. Congressman Joyce obviously gets the issue here. Do you feel like a lot of other lawmakers are online to the issues when it comes to 5G and China and the potential implications, or is it still an education?
I think it's both. I mean, I think we've seen in many issues that you need to learn new language, So I've met many of the HASC and SASC members, and I think, we're learning to talk each other's language, and I think it's important, and I think we all realize it's important, so that's what's encouraging, that both House and Senate and Commerce and Security committees are working together and realize we need to get this done. The question is, how do we get it done?
Right. Aside from reauthorizing the Spectrum Auction Authority, Congressman Joyce mentioned a resolution he's going to put forward. What does Congress need to do here, you think?
I think we really need to, as I said, I think we need auction authority. It's critical, but it needs to have specific bans attached to it, because I think the timelines are really important. And that's the way it's always moved through Congress. Everybody wins there, too, because you get a little bump in your scoring if you assign specific bans at specific timetables. So it's something that we should see, and I'm hopeful that we will see in this Congress. Again, moving forward with the Cruz-Thune bill is a really great starting place, because now we have something that is real. It is the gold standard of what this industry needs for a blueprint for the next decade. So I'm pleased that we have something to at least talk about.
Right. And they introduced that last month, I think. Is that right? March?
A couple of weeks, maybe?
Yeah. I know we're running out of time. I got a couple of just questions I want to ask you.
Don't ask me about the presidential race in Pennsylvania, please.
What are your thoughts on Pennsylvania?
That was the hardball.
The FCC is planning to reinstate Title II net neutrality when it meets next week, likely. What are the implications of that?
I'm kind of glad you asked, because you're the first person literally to ask me that question this entire year, which I think shows you something, that the internet is working. It is open, and everybody believes in an open internet, and that there are no problems. And even the FCC has said they have found no problems. But here we are addressing the same political issue. I think the answer is the FCC is really looking for a power grab on a part of the economy that's a really big part of the economy now. And that's the bigger issue, and that's a job for Congress.
And one last question on the Affordable Connectivity Program. It's about to run out of money. Congressman Joyce doesn't seem inclined to provide more money. This is a common Republican stance. Where do you guys stand on this? Do you think it served its purpose, or would you like to see it extended?
I think ACP has been one of the most successful programs we have seen in government. I mean, we have 23 million people enrolled. We support the program. We support it continuing. We also support greater universal service reform, which is very important, but has been a very knotty, difficult problem for many, many years. I remember when I was at the FCC, I was like, the contributions can't go above 12%. No consumer will pay more than 12% for universal service. Well, I mean, it's obviously more. It's coming close to tripling that. So that needs to. That they are right. Everyone's right here. ACP is very successful, and people are depending on it, and we are bringing new people, critical parts of consumers to broadband through ACP. But the whole entire universal service program needs to be reformed.
Meredith, thank you so much for sharing your insights today on 5G, competitiveness, and spectrum. It's been really great chatting with you.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you all for joining us today here in person and on the live stream. We have a lot of events coming up this spring and summer we're really excited about. So check out the events hub at punchbowl.news, and everyone stay safe. Thank you.